We will call this meeting to order at 5 p.m. Joe, would you be kind enough to do some roll call for us?
Sure. Joe Eichsted, City Engineer.
Paul Vollert, Public Works Superintendent.
Brian Austin, District 1 Alderperson.
Madeline Palmquist, District 8 Alderperson.
Jeff Penscover, District 4 Alderperson.
Dennis Pollock, 6th Ward Alderman.
Matt Zacher, Mayor.
All right, that's everybody. Item 2, Review Engineering and Street Department Monthly Activity Report. Paul, would you like to start us off?
Sounds good, thank you. Sorry. Our report is attached as usual. Garbage and recycling collection are up a little bit based off of last year's numbers, which is good and bad. Our construction project on Lincoln Street has been moving along well. We have all the underground installed in the intersection of Chestnut Street, and then all the way to the north, just to the north of Witter Street. Engineering has contacted Summers Construction, and they will be coming in possibly next week, weather permitting, to install the curb and gutter at Chestnut, and then all the way north to the north side of Witter Street. And we'll continue to install the underground utilities and complete the road work. Our installations are shown on there. Over the last month, we installed over 775 feet of sanitary and 800 feet of water, including the ancillary things there. Our street maintenance, we got a jump start on our street maintenance activities as well. Many of you will notice over the last week and a half, we had the expressway closed down from A Street to the bridge, putting mastic over the joint repairs and some of the larger cracks. We still have some work on the expressway to do as far as a few concrete panel replacements and a manhole down close to 3rd Street that the cover is broken on. Engineering department in Summers Construction has also done curb and gutter maintenance north of the expressway, east of A Street, and our involvement has been starting and doing the restoration work with the black dirt and the seeding, and then also preparation of the asphalt on the curb and gutter repairs. The hot mix plant is, my understanding, firing up middle of next week, I believe it was. So we'll be doing some of that restoration work. Right now, there's a lot of holes up there, but we got a lot of work done in the last 2 weeks, so hopefully try to get that put back before the holidays coming up. So the work involved there, like I say, is just removing the excess black dirt, putting new black dirt in there, and then seeding and mulching those areas, sawing the asphalt, digging that out, getting it ready for new asphalt and things like that. Last week was also, or the last week of the month was also the first brush collection for the year. So that has been completed. We also completed the spring yard waste collection as well, and then also, I believe it was April 15th, both east side and west side compost sites were open. Again, the east side is open Mondays and Wednesdays from noon to 7, and then Saturday 8 to 5. And then the west side is Tuesdays and Thursdays is open till 7, and they open at 7:30 each day for residents to use that as well. Again, we got a jump start on the spring cleanups. All the islands and paved boulevards have been cleaned. This whole entire city has been swept at least once. And they are going through and starting on that the second time. Our typical rotation throughout the city is once every 4 to 5 weeks. They should be passed through your neighborhood or whatever, so like once a month is what we say, but sometimes it gets stretched to 5 weeks or whatever. Our sign shop has been busy doing the sign repair with the decent weather that we've had. And actually this week we started to do some of our crosswalk painting and smaller handwork and things like that. It's not really 100% ideal yet with the cooler morning temperatures, but we're still able to get some hours out and get painting and getting a head start on that. Our shop has done well. We are down a full-time mechanic. We're still trying to fill that second shift mechanic position. We have some more additional interviews coming up here in the future weeks. But we have pretty much converted everything over from our snow fighting setup to our summer activities. So the wings have been removed from the trucks and the loaders and the graders, and all the sanders are removed. And then, if you remember, 2 months ago, we took delivery of 2 new quad axles. We got the older trucks ready and sent up to the auction this last week. So those have been auctioned off and are out of our possession or whatever. With that, also some minor repairs on our vehicles, and then also some ambulances and fire trucks and things like that. But that's a good summary of my report.
Thank you, Paul. Any questions on the street department report? Go ahead, Dennis.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Under your paints and signs there, that work there that you did in Grand Rapids, do you bill them for that?
Yep, we do that work, time and materials. So yes, that gets billed out.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? All right, we'll move to engineering department. Go ahead, Joe.
All right, thank you. So for the engineering department in the month of April, definitely seen an uptick in the Diggers Hotline locates for storm sewer and sanitary sewer, with 272 tickets logged during the month. And then we also have a request that came in for a stop sign on Apricot Street at 14th Street. That came in March. And I did include some information, our typical report that we put together. That's included in the monthly report. For this month, it's also identified on the referral list that we'll get to later in the agenda. But I guess just a quick snapshot of the study that we've done to date. The Apricot Street is a collector street, and 14th Street is just a local street with a stop-controlled condition on 14th Street. There's been one accident there in the last 10 years, which occurred in 2023, with the vehicle failing to yield at the stop sign, causing a right-angle collision. There's also one slight vision issue in the northwest quadrant of the intersection. The traffic is quite low, with only 102 vehicles on Apricot Street, with an average 85th percentile speed of 31 miles per hour. Given all the information that we've looked at to date, we would not be recommending creating a four-way stop condition here. But that's where the, I guess, report sits for right now. And, if the committee wishes to take it up as an item at a future agenda, we can always do that. In addition, we've had some vision triangle issues, a couple that we followed up on from last year, a couple that are in progress as well, one on Canal Street and High Street that we've notified the property owner of, so that's in progress. For designs for this year, pretty much all of our projects are complete at this point. We just finalized the pickleball court designs today, in fact, and they're going to be going out advertised for bid here next week with a bid opening June 4th at 1 p.m. Paul kind of touched on some of the sidewalk and curb maintenance that's primarily complete at this point. There's a couple repairs that we're going to have the contractor do before we officially complete the activity. All the sidewalk cutting work done by Safe Step, that's all complete at this point. And then looking at future projects, we're going to start reviewing the next year capital improvement plan update fairly soon here. But we also have a few projects that are on the horizon that we're going to probably bring back for a preliminary resolution to the committee. That would be 13th Avenue from West Grand Avenue to the north dead end, Plover Street from First Street north to Apricot, and then 2nd Street north from Spring Street to Pleasant View Drive. We're also working on permit activities for the Riverwall Rehabilitation Project in front of Veterans in Mead Rapids View Park. That design is complete. We're just working on permits at this point. Quick update on the 1 Mile Creek. We've had a little bit of progress on the permitting for that project. The dredging permit has already been obtained. The dam permit, we're still working through that. We did get information back to the DNR this last month, so perhaps we'll see some further activity here in the month of May that will clarify when we're going to see a permit for that project. We also have a acceptance offer, or offer of acceptance for a seasonal technician applicant that's going to start June 3rd, so anxiously awaiting their start to assist with some of the summer activities with construction. Lastly, there is also included in the packet information that we received from the Office of the Commissioner of Railroads, specific to the 32nd Street crossing just north of Kingston Road at the corporate limits with the Village of Buren. The Office of Commissioner of Railroads put a final decision together, basically outlining some deficiencies in the vision at the crossing, but most notably, was the vision and the signage at the crossing, but most notably was the order at the end of the document, basically requiring that the city, in consultation with the Village of Buren and Wisconsin Central Limited, shall file a petition for alteration of the 32nd Street crossing. And they have a date of April 29th of 2024. We did request an extension to that requirement to file a petition, and are actively working through the details of that. Basically, in the early 90s, the city widened 32nd Street south of the crossing to a 48-foot street from face of curb to face of curb. And the Office of Commissioner of Railroads does not have a petition on file for that alteration. So working with them to see what we can come up with for a corrective action for that, and then file a petition of alteration. We did request an extension up to October 31st of this year for that filing, and that was granted, so we have some time here to work with the DOT and the OCR to figure out what needs to be done, and we'll keep the committee apprised of this situation.
All right, any questions for Joe on the engineering department report? Hearing none, we'll move to item 3, a request from Jay Catnaw on behalf of Bob and Marlene Holtz at 740 Oak Street to consider adjusting parking and signage on Oak Street directly next to their home. Joe, you want to kick us off on this one?
Sure. So this originally came before the committee in July of 2023, and it had come through the committee with approval to remove the no parking ordinance on the south side of Oak Street. Just looking at this here. And so that went to council at the time. The council pulled this item out, overturned that decision to keep the parking ordinance in place. Some period of time had elapsed since that action had been made. There was an inquiry from the police department to the engineering department. We consulted the minutes coming out of the committee, which showed approval of removal of the parking ordinance. So the sign was actually pulled down for a period of time, a brief period of time, before being corrected and put back up. That, I think, has created a little bit of confusion and maybe a little bit of a taste of what it's like to be able to allow parking on that side of the street. But there is a request from the property owners that live at the southwest corner of the 8th and Oak Street intersection. And I think at the time, engineering was recommending repeal of the ordinance to remove the parking restrictions on the south side, noting that most of the vehicles that would be parking there would likely be teachers and not parents dropping off kids that would have to then cross the street. It does sound like it's something the teachers would like, and then, of course, the residents as well on that side of the street to be able to have the additional space for parking.
Thank you, Joe. Questions or comments by committee?
Yes, so I guess the options before the committee would be to, there's always the do-nothing option, which is to keep the no parking ordinance in place. Otherwise, certainly if there's questions, we can answer them, and then if there is a motion, if the committee would like to repeal the ordinance, remove the no parking ordinance to thereby allow parking on that side of the street. There is a draft ordinance revision that's included in the packet. This is the one that was provided, I guess, the last go-around to the committee, that you could always make the motion to do that.
I guess just one comment to this, because I recall this situation. The concern from council was that the property owners wouldn't necessarily agree with the removal of the ordinance. And now we're seeing that one of the two property owners is saying that they would like the ordinance removed. So, in my mind, I think that should help the decision on council's side to understand that this is wanted by not only the folks over at Howell, but also the property owners there at that location. So, action by the committee. Anybody want to make a motion on this or any more questions?
I have a question before we make a motion. So the north side of the street, and I drove by before I came in tonight just so I could see it, is from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. on school days. It's authorized for bus and taxi drop-off. I don't have any children, so I can't confirm that that area is actually used for bus pickup and drop-off. But when this was brought up previously, was that addressed at all? If the buses actually come in and then parking on that side of the street during those hours when the buses are there would interfere?
Yeah, so my understanding is the signage there, the parking restrictions there, they are appropriate. We work with the police officer, with school liaison police officer that, on all of the school-related requests, which this initial request came through the police officer. So they didn't have any issues with the parking on the north side of House Street. That was operating fine. I think periodically as they see issues that need to be corrected, they're usually sending it over to engineering to review it and then bring to the committee for any adjustments that need to be made. So, over the past few years, there have been some changes made at various schools in the city, but no issues that I'm aware of on the north side.
Okay. Then on our referral list, we also, number 5 on the referral list is also related to the parking ordinance. If we make the decision to repeal this, would we be repealing the ordinance, removing the one thing, putting it back in, and then coming back at a later time to make more changes?
I don't believe so. This particular item, if it was motioned to remove the parking restriction, the passage of this one sole item would just be stricken from the ordinance that is currently in place today. And then, as the legislative committee takes further action on Chapter 27 as a whole, once that's approved, then, things will be, I don't think it'll affect this particular parking restriction here.
Okay. I wanted to make sure it wasn't overly burdensome to do the updates, and then later, hopefully soon, do the other set of updates if it was just going to be smoother to do them both at the same time.
Sure.
That's all my questions.
I would be willing to make a motion if it's called for to remove the parking restriction on the south side of Oak Street on said corner.
Okay, we have a motion to remove the ordinance. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll go to vote. All in favor respond with aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Ayes have it. All right, moving on. Item number 4, review and discuss the establishment of railroad quiet zones. Joe? I guess an overview of kind of the information we've received over the last year or two, and then we'll see what discussion that brings.
Okay, great. So yeah, this was last reviewed in August of 2022, and then a few times prior to that, in say the last 10 or 15 years. I guess some of the requirements for establishment of a quiet zone, all of the crossings within the quiet zone, they have to have flashing lights and gates at all crossings. The minimum crossing or quiet zone length is a half a mile. And the other requirement is to reduce the risk of not using the train horn, to drop the risk below, to fully compensate for the loss of train horn and reduce it to less than the nationwide safety average determined by the Federal Railroad Administration. And that number can vary, the nationwide safety average can vary on an annual basis. There are several ways to reduce the risk at the crossings when they no longer blow the horns. Medians, channelizations, conversions to one-way streets, 4-quadrant gates, grade separation, closing of a crossing, all of those things, either temporary or permanently, could be done to accommodate for the loss of train horn and increase the safety and reduce the risk. Some of the paperwork that's required, of course, we'd be working with the Federal Railroad Administration on an application with a notice of intent, and then if approved, the safety devices would then be installed to either the lights and gates or any of the what they call supplemental or alternative safety measures would have to be employed at various crossings depending on what we needed to get for safety. So there's several pieces of information that I did include in the packet, things that we've presented to the committee over the years, but the most recent stuff is from the study that was done. Let me just get to it here. The Wisconsin Rapids Feasibility Study Report that Patrick Engineering and Link Things had put together. I just pulled pages out that were specific to the quiet zones. The ones that are in this study are primarily just on the west side of the river. There is some other information in the documents here that pertain to the east side as well, but definitely more crossings on the west side. And then there is an analysis of the costs. So basically the main one coming from Gaynor Avenue up to 17th, Gaynor Avenue through 17th Avenue in the north along the expressway. That was most recently valued at an estimated cost of $2.9 million to get quiet zone established there. Primarily, one of the biggest cost drivers is the lights and gates. If not all of them have them, that they can range from anywhere from $200,000 to $400,000 each, just for lights and gates at a crossing. I guess that's kind of the background in a nutshell, but certainly if there's questions, I can certainly try to answer them.
We'll open it up to questions.
I have questions. So I'm looking at page 29 on our packet, with the risk assessment and then the cost. So the west side section between Seneca and Dur Beauty has an approximate cost of 700,000. Is that to install the supplemental safety measures, or is that just bringing gates and lights in? Because all of those crossings except for 17th have lights.
I'm just gonna get to the PDF here so I can look at the right page. Was it 28? 29?
29.
Okay. So these slides were, I think, originally developed in 2009, I think, but, what was your specific question again? Which crossing and with lights and gates?
What does that 700,000 estimate include?
Okay. So, it includes, so for eight crossings, I think oh, that's a good question. I know there was some supplemental items that needed to be, increased specifically at High Street. Fremont doesn't have lights and gates, so the 200,000, I think was the value of lights and gates that was used in these estimates. I'm not sure at Seneca Road, I don't recall what that specifically included. Unless maybe it was a misconception at the time that it didn't have gates, but yeah, that crossing certainly does. The more accurate numbers are the ones I would say probably included in the latest study in 2022.
All right, just to clear that up, I guess that slide is referring to a 2009 quote. Is that more accurate to say?
Yeah, those numbers are a little bit more dated now, and I think it all depends on, we need a quiet zone of at least a half mile in length. And so, at least when we've looked at this in the past, we thought, well, okay, we could go from, say, 17th Avenue, hit Chase Street, Grand, High Street, and, we could create a quiet zone through that stretch. We'd have a half a mile, but then they'll hit Fremont Street, and then, they'll be outside the quiet zone again, and then they'll be blowing their horns. So that's kind of part of the reality of it is a large expense that, if your safety, if the national threshold changes in any given year, that the investment that you made, could disappear without additional safety measures. And then at any given time, if the engineer that's operating the train feels that it's necessary to blow the horn regardless of a quiet zone, they have, full authority to do that as well.
All right, so just to kind of cover costs on the various options here. So improvements at Bono, which is option 2 in the packet, we're looking at a total cost for $2,900,000. Improvements at Gainer and 17th, we're which is option 6.3, or also option 2, is also $2.9 million. And then the Whitehall sub, which is alternate 6-4, is a total of $5,400,000. And those three options would cover essentially the entire city for being a quiet zone. Is that accurate, Joe?
That would cover everything on the west side of the river. The ones on the east side of the river, those weren't part of the rail feasibility study. But there are 5 crossings on the east side of the river, and then, again, using some dated information, from 2009, they're at least 600,000, or they were 600,000 roughly figured at that time, and definitely probably more in line with the million plus at this point in time, if something wanted to be done on the east side of town.
Any more questions?
Yeah, I'm struggling a little bit. So I looked at the federal guidance, which stated that a new quiet zone must at minimum have flashing lights and gates at each public crossing with consistent warning time devices and power out indicators. And when you run your QZRI, which looks like it was done, if your risk zone index is less than the national index, then you would automatically qualify for a quiet zone without having to implement any supplemental safety measures. The downside to that is that you have to refile and reassess every year. So if at minimum we need lights at each crossing, then it appears that this cost is significantly reduced because we already have those lights at West Grand Avenue and Chase Street. And that risk zone index isn't based on each crossing, it's based on that half-mile stretch.
That's correct. I think with the lights and gates, the one caveat to what the costs will be versus what we think they might be, it's a direct cost that the railroad would charge the city for. And so if we say we have lights today and not gates, I'm not sure if it's just a matter of just adding a lesser cost for the gates. It might be taking them all down, new infrastructure put up, and it's usually a nice round number that they provide to the city or the community, whoever they're putting them up for, it's just their set rate, regardless of what it may actually cost them. So even if we have lights at a crossing, or perhaps even lights and gates, if there's any of it that needs updating at the time that we do it, it might still be, hey, well, it's still the 250,000 or whatever that value is.
Any further discussion?
Is there the possibility to update or to relook at our nationwide, or do another assessment and then update based on the current rules to see if we can get by with the minimum requirement?
Yeah, we can certainly update them. I guess it'd be helpful to know which length or which crossings that you'd be interested in seeing, unless you want to see them all.
I like including all of the city, just because we don't want to have one area be positively impacted by the quiet crossings and then the others not. But I also like the breakdown of how they're separated, because if the cost varies drastically from each area, we could make the decision to do one before the other and not all of it at once, which would make the cost a little more tolerable when we try to work that in.
Is that something that we can start going through the motions on, Joe, to,
Yeah, we can update them, try to get some, I guess, some more information on it. I was just going back to look real quick to see, from the study completed in February of 2023, they had provided the nationwide significant risk threshold numbers for that, each set of the crossings that were reviewed, and compared those against the Quiet Zone Risk Index. So, I mean, that was fairly recent, just a little over a year ago. But we can find out what the latest numbers are, and review some of the cost estimates that Patrick Engineering had put together.
I'd kind of like to revisit this maybe next month if we could, get a little more information. And I guess I really didn't know a lot about this to begin with until I started reading the packet and maybe do a little research. I guess all things being equal, if that's possible.
agreed, is that reasonable, Joe? We'll let you collect some data, and we'll just revisit this item and see what you come up with in a month and go from there.
That sounds good.
Okay. All right, we'll move on. If I can get my agenda up here. So item 5, review and consider approval of the Wisconsin DOT State Municipal Agreement for funding a portion of the Lincoln Street project through the Municipal Street Improvement Supplemental Program as part of the Local Road Improvement Program. Joe?
Thank you. So, we did, just gotta find my paperwork here. We did apply for, Mr. Austin, you might remember us bringing it before the committee to apply for this funding through this program. We were awarded funds in the amount of $234,000 towards the Lincoln Street project, so it's about 50% of the eligible costs are being funded by the state. And so there's a letter that addresses it from the DOT Secretary, Craig Thompson. In reviewing this ahead of the meeting, I wasn't sure if we would have a separate state municipal agreement that needed to be approved by the committee. But as part of what I found out is, as part of our application, that the submission of the application basically signed the state municipal agreement, and then the only thing remaining for that to be official was the DOT's signature. I did provide a copy of that to you, but otherwise, it's something that we didn't expect to get funding for necessarily, so that'll definitely help from a budgetary and financial standpoint. But otherwise, I don't believe that any specific action is needed for this item this evening.
Thank you, Joe. Yeah, it's a great award and greatly needed. We will take every penny. So thank you for your work on that. Any comments or questions by committee?
I was gonna say what you just said, take what you can get.
All right, then we'll move on to item 6, which is review the referral list. So being that we got a couple new community members, I think we'll just go through this line by line. Item 1 is request from Alderperson Tom Rayom to discuss the future of A Street South. There's been several conversations based around A Street throughout Public Works here and some updates, and we actually have a project coming at us I think it's 2028, Joe. What section of 8th Street is that again?
That's from Lakewood Lane, so the very south corporate limits, up to Whitrock Avenue. That's 2028 with a potential to advance to 2026.
And obviously other projects on the horizon, hopefully very soon for 8th Street. Item 2 is request from Rayom for quiet zones for trains on the east side of the city, which we kind of covered on our last item here. Item 3 is review the change order policy and consider updates. Item 4 has been crossed off. We have gone through that one. Item 5 is request from Melanie Minaveri to review and revise the parking ordinance and overnight parking, which is something that sounds like we'll be taking up in the legislative here soon. Item 6 is review from Jake Catnaw on behalf of Bob and Marlene Holtz for the Oak Street, which we just covered in our agenda. Item 7, request from Tom Rayom to pave 3rd Street North and 4th Street North between Spring Street and Poplar Street. Item 8 is request from Tom Rayom to light the railing and or the riverbank in both Veterans Park and Mead Rapids View Park. And lastly, item 9 is request from Patrick Flatoff to install a stop sign on Apricot Street at 14th Street North. Any questions, comments, or potential additions to the referral list?
I would say that 14th Street stop sign is totally unnecessary, but that's me. I've lived in that neighborhood forever. If there was an accident there, that was a fluke more than anything else. That would be a comment I would have on that particular item.
And, you know, on that topic, that traffic study was completed, found that staff recommends no action there.
Okay.
So we can absolutely remove it from the referral list if that is
Sure.
desired.
I kind of gathered that from the paperwork, but I wasn't sure.
Joe, you want to go ahead and remove that one?
Sure.
All right, anything else?
Just out of curiosity and closing the loop, is there a formal process for notifying the resident who submitted that request? We'll follow up with him and let him know.
Yeah, I do have his contact information, so I'll reach out and let him know.
Excellent, thank you.
Good question. Go ahead, Paul.
Thank you. I had just made a suggestion to Alderperson Austin that I thought it would be a good idea. I met yesterday with Alderperson Penscover, but just as a committee, I guess I suggest or open the doors to the city garage, that we maybe get together outside of this meeting just to see our operation over there, so that you have a better understanding of what we do and things like that. Years ago, it used to be part of a new alderperson orientation that was done, but like I say, I offer that as a possibility that we do outside of this meeting, and possibly in the next 2 months, we can get a night that works for everybody or whatever, so.
Thanks for sharing that, Paul. I think the idea of a alderperson orientation is a very good one. Understanding city operations, particular, you know, to streets and engineering and, you know, wastewater and, you know, waterworks and light is pretty critical, considering the decisions that we make here. Is there any interest in setting up a time for us to meet at the street department here in the next month or two? I can maybe send out an email with some potential dates and kind of schedule a tour, if you will, and maybe some information from Paul.
I'd be very interested. I've got kind of a flexible schedule, so it's up to what you guys come up with.
Okay.
Yeah.
Usually around 5, works
Sure.
for me.
And I think, you know, we have Mayor Zachary here. We should probably extend that information to the rest of the council members as well. Any thoughts on that from your end?
I'm in full agreement with the more education we can get for the aldermen, and the more they can be a part of the departments and talking closely with the department heads. I'm all in favor of it, and I can pass that along to the rest of the aldermen persons.
Okay, well, we'll schedule something on the public works side, and we'll definitely share with the rest of council, and that invitation will extend to everyone. Dennis?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I would be in favor of that too. I think that's real important to to look at whatever we can outside of City Hall.
Yep.
So if you
Agreed.
can set up something, that's great.
Sounds great. All right, we'll move to item 7, which is set the next meeting date. And look at the calendar here. Looks like June 6th would be our next commonly scheduled date. Any objections to 5 p.m., June 6th?
I've got no problem with it.
Agreed.
Let it be written. And we're on to adjournment. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Everyone in favor, respond with aye.
Aye.
All right, have a great evening, everyone. Thank you.